Welcome back to this week's episode of Clothing Brief. We have a few exciting things to share with you. One, if you are listening to this on our audio platform, maybe this is a good time to go check out the video because we have a gorgeous 30-foot tree behind us.
Yes.
We are celebrating the holidays.
Biggest tree I think we've ever had. The top is actually
it's bending.
bent.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. We're doing a year-end review right now. We've received some pretty wonderful feedback from our following. Thank you so much for being a part of our clothing culture community. We have been a fan favorite on Spotify. We have received
Top 25 rising stars for Spotify.
Right, rising star for Spotify, and top
25% for
in video
viewing.
and top 10 podcast in fashion and beauty in Apple. So, wow,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Kind of blown away.
We're going to keep producing good content. We've got great conversations in our longer format, Clothing Culture, coming out soon. And of course, we love these weekly drops with Clothing Brief, sharing the latest news of what has been happening in our industry. So let's dive right in. Every week it seems like we're bringing a story of change in the luxury sector. And this week, we're not going to disappoint. We've got a couple shakeups.
Yeah, it's like tariffs and change in management at luxury is a common weekly thing.
It is. This week, it's Versace.
Yeah. Dario Vitale, I mean, it's like he came and went. He had one collection. It was kind of his, debut and finale all wrapped together. Yeah. People are really saying that, there's this new strategic direction because Prada Group has kind of taken over. Dario took over when Donatella, who ran that, after the untimely death of her brother, and has been doing that for 30 years. And then, she left and retired. And now in the interim, Emmanuel Ginsberger, who's the CEO, Versace CEO, is kind of managing some of that creative oversight. But it is pretty astounding that every week we're hearing about, in my opinion, pretty large scale change at the top.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a very difficult, a tall order to bring in a new creative director for a company that was, initially inspired by Donatella, and then she's
going to have her opinion.
And, yes. Yeah. And, in an era where brands are looking to evolve, bring in fresh perspective, how do you do that while honoring the legacy? It can be a really tricky balance.
And we've talked about this in the past. I think it's kind of a condition that luxury is going through because the new generation really doesn't care about the brand legacy anymore.
Right.
And they're listening to influencers a hell of a lot more. They're less, quote, influenced by luxury branding. And I think these groups that have had years and years of success, built this, building their brand equity are struggling because the youth don't care.
Finding relevance.
Yeah, finding relevance is a challenge.
Yeah. Brioni is seeing an exit as well.
Yeah. Norbert Stumpfel, he's been there for about 7 years. And, the amazing thing about Brioni is that every time you try on a Brioni suit, and I'm not the perfect candidate for that, it's built for someone with a shorter stature than me, the rise is shorter.
A model body, maybe.
Yeah, a model body. Yeah. But when you try them on, they've always felt so beautifully tailored. They've draped very well. And he's kind of doubled down on that, where this whole lightness and discretion was kind of his moniker. When you put it on, it just looked like you were born to be in the suit. And it was just softer silhouettes with Brioni. And, I think, they've moved on. I think they're trying to find their next step. And it's coming in line with they've been around 80 years. So they're getting ready to celebrate their 80th year. So it'll be interesting what Brioni's, trying to do with that next step. This whole understated elegance thing provides another layer of challenge because Brioni's been relatively quiet in the luxury scene in terms of advertising and marketing, and relied on this legacy of
reputation.
beautiful tailoring. And so
Yeah.
let's see what happens for
New
sure.
year, 80th anniversary, and a creative change. It'll
Yeah.
be interesting. So, you know, another thing that's happening in the Italian brands is we've talked about it a couple times. There's been some scrutiny over ethical fair labor practices in their manufacturing base, and the police just went into several of these major houses demanding documentation to prove that ethical practices are being managed.
Yeah, they went into 13 luxury fashion firms, Gucci, Prada, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, Ferragamo, others. And they're initially just requesting documents on governance and supply chain. There's no one been formally, indicted. They're not formally under investigation. They're hoping that these houses will come forward with information to show that they are ethically managing that. It's interesting because, as we've talked, there's this kind of broader crackdown on exploitation. I would tell you that, the Italians were very, I don't know what to say.
Savvy?
Savvy is a good word for taking what's best of Chinese manufacturing. Chinese tailors and sewers are some of the best in the world. They're really good at what they do. In China, they're also affordable. Even though costs are rising in China, they're still way more affordable than domestic Italian labor. And much like the US, modern Italians don't want to sit a sewing line sewing. Well, Italy's built this legacy of, hey, made in Italy equals luxury, right? And so years ago, they had this very interesting import scheme where they would bring work visas for Chinese workers. And there's a specific area in Italy that's kind of the apparel manufacturing zone. It's outside of Florence. It's called Prato. And I've been there quite a bit, and it's an interesting area. They're really dedicated, and there are smaller houses and much larger houses in Prato. And what's wild is out of about 4,800 manufacturing houses in Prato, 3,800 of them are Chinese managed.
Okay.
So that is a large percentage of that.
75% or so. Right?
Yeah. And there's these numbers out there that are saying there's about 30,000 Chinese workers that are in that area. But the statistics really talk about those that have Italian citizenship or green card. They don't really talk about these kind of influx and outflux of these Chinese workers with work visas. So estimates are that number is much larger, maybe 50,000 or so. There's about 300,000 Chinese living in Italy. And so the numbers are a little squishy. So when you've got this transient labor coming in and going out, when they're dealing with manufacturing and anywhere in the world, if they don't have an established infrastructure for workers' rights and, rap isn't at all these factories or whatever, because it's Italy, it should be fine. There is this situation where stuff is rampant for this challenge. And so it's going to be an interesting conversation, and we'll see what shakes out of that.
This is, of course, one of the reasons why when COVID broke out, there was it was the center of it was really Italy.
It was. And people were like, why are the Italians so particularly hard hit? It's because there were flights from China in and out of Italy every day with these workers. And so as COVID hit China really strongly, they basically just imported COVID right into Italy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Another news headline that was released in the last week was a very fascinating collaboration between two brands, Stella McCartney and H&M. This is quite a surprise because these two companies seem like they are very different in principle.
Yeah, on the surface, you look at H&M, it's one of the big bad fast fashion companies that are trying to do maybe things that are better. And then you got Stella McCartney that is,
all about
completely focused on sustainability. And I would say it's an interesting collaboration. We've talked before about being careful not to immediately label these large companies or any companies that are trying to do the right thing as greenwashing, and that what they're trying to do is inauthentic. And so I would in some ways congratulate H&M for kind of shrewd marketing. But in addition to that, if the intent goes much, much deeper, they're bringing in someone that's dedicated to sustainability and style. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. The more that they focus on that, the more that they figure out solutions globally on trying to build a sustainable initiative, the better it is. And
Yeah.
so I I will, let's see what
Yeah,
happens.
keep
But
an open mind.
yeah,
I agree. I think that if she is putting her name on it, that there's going to be some care taken to make sure that it's
and we found in past, just on a, let's see, on a purely fashion platform, that large companies have come in and radically changed the trajectory of these smaller brands. Like Stella McCartney, we've said in previous details, is going through a little bit of a struggle financially, in terms of where they're at. And this has happened in the past with Target, where there have been brands that are very creative and really great that have struggled with profitability and revenue growth and everything else. Massimo was one of those at Target that ended up becoming a billionaire
Yes.
with Target's influence. This could be an interesting thing where Stella comes in, the team comes in and helps move that trajectory further along the path. And then I think it's very lucrative for Stella. Right?
Yes, of course. Well, that's exciting. Well, the last story of this week comes with a little controversy. Pantone has revealed the 2026 color of the year, Cloud Dancer. I've been talking to a lot of colleagues in the industry about this decision, and I'm hearing conversations on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
Some that are Dancer is tone deaf. As we are in an era of rising racial tensions with our politics hand right now. And then there are some that are saying, hey, white as a color is actually a combination of all colors. And this could be an attempt to celebrate that. Or I've heard other trend forecasters, for example, say that, this is a time where this is more like a blank slate, allowing people to have a fresh breath amidst, again, a time when we are feeling pressures and chaos. So it's a very polarizing conversation that's happening right now.
And I doubt Pantone really thought that launching Cloud Dancer was going to make this such a big conversation. It's funny because as a group, we've used that color for quite some time. And it's a beautiful, soft, neutral, I would say, shade. I've never used it specifically as color. But it's a color, right? It's not maybe one of the more vibrant choices they've made in the past when they jumped on yellow or purple or whatever like that. And so they have a reason for it. We've kind of reached out to Pantone.
We have. I'm hoping we can have a bigger conversation.
It'd be great to hear why the decision was Cloud Dancer. And hey, look, when you've got an open platform, everyone's going to have a million opinions. At the core, it's a color. Decide whether or not you think it's applicable for the season. They've made that the color for their season. Pantone doesn't require you guys to follow, the industry to follow every time their color choice, but I think it's interesting.
It is definitely a respected source. And people in the industry absolutely pay attention to it. So,
and what's amazing when you look at these colors, especially like Cloud Dancer, a big percentage of collections are in these neutrals, blacks, naturals, whatever. So as a percentage of a total collection, it's a pretty heavy color to think about when you introduce things into your collection.
It is, but there's a great deal of responsibility, I think, with a company that has such an influence in the industry, to be really thinking through all of how it could be perceived, and the importance of making a decision. So it'll be interesting to see as this conversation continues to unfold, and hopefully we'll be able to have a conversation with Pantone about it.
It'd be great.
Yeah. Well, those are our highlights for the week. We'll be right back here, same time, same place next week. And we've got some wonderful new episodes getting ready to roll out on our longer platform, Clothing Culture Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay apprised of upcoming episodes.